So what you see here is what I have kind of added to throughout the day yesterday, and I'm going to continue to do so, remembering that we can be using either an ebony or a sketching pencil, and I have those here when you're ready to use those. And we said we're going to start with our middle to light values, and the reason for that is because if we dive right in and shade in those really dark values, that graphite's going to want to go everywhere. It kind of sits on the surface of the paper and it wants to move around as you drag your hand through it, and then it's really hard to see what's what. So we want to start with our medium tones. We'll eventually get to those darker tones, but we don't want to jump right into those, as tempting as it can be. Okay? So I'm just going to continue, and a lot of this picture, believe it or not, is that kind of a light to medium tone. I left off yesterday with this second horse here, and there was a couple of spots where you can see I actually did go ahead and fill in a dark spot, but notice it's just a really small one. It's not a big black dark area, so that's not going to be as big of a challenge for me as filling in a really big area. So it's okay as you go through to go ahead and fill in some of those little spaces, and that's really just going to help us keep track of where we are. Okay, so the eye and some of the shadows around the eye are something that I'm gonna want to spend a little bit of time on and go ahead and commit to being pretty dark. Okay, notice that I'm using a circular motion, overlapping motion, and it's hard for you to tell, I'm sure, but I'm really hardly applying any pressure at all. The tooth of the paper is going to just pull that soft lead right off of there. So I really don't have to apply much pressure at all to get a smooth coverage. And then my finger is just going to act as a nice smoothing tool to blend in any gaps in there. Okay. I've intentionally left the areas around the mane unshaded because those are some of the lightest areas that I'm going to have. But sometimes it's a good idea, it helps for you to keep track of where you are, to outline around them. We're not outlining them so much as we're shading the areas behind them. Thinking about negative space, thinking about, okay, what's behind that? So right now, like for instance, I'm kind of defining this edge here, and I'm not drawing a line around the mane so much as I'm shading the area behind it. Okay, so we're stepping away from the outlining piece of this assignment, and we're getting into the actual covering large areas with a value. Okay, so notice how defining the area around that mane really makes it pop. Okay, I'm going to go a little darker as I head towards the back of the jaw line of the horse here. And this is going to be one of my darker values. It's a fairly small area, so I'm just going to go ahead and commit to going pretty dark there, just because otherwise I think I'm going to lose track of where I am on the horse, if that makes sense. Okay. Another small area here, I'm going to go ahead and commit to that, because it's just going to help me make sure I know where I'm at in the picture. Every once in a while you might find that the copy of your picture that is in black and white doesn't have enough detail for you to tell what's happening. It's perfectly reasonable to go back periodically and look at your colored image to make sure that you're actually getting the details right. This is really just a tool to help you with the values, you know, knowing where on that grayscale you should be. Okay. So I would just continue in this way. Notice that already we're starting to see the head of the horse come out. Notice, do you guys see this light stripe down the nose, the bridge of the nose of the horse? Well, I obviously want to keep that light, but I also don't want to lose it in the process. So again, I'm thinking about the negative space. I'm going to lay in just a light value behind it. I'm not outlining it. I'm sort of defining it, I guess is the difference, right? So I'm not just drawing a line around it. I'm filling in some of the value behind it. Again, kind of thinking about this in terms of negative space, okay? And making sure that we're leaving those bright spots. And again, we can clean them up later. We talked about that yesterday. We can go back later. If a white area or light area gets too dark, we just clean it up with an eraser. But I wouldn't do that along the way because it's just going to happen again as you continue to work with the drawing. So you want to just make sure that you kind of save those spots as best you can and then clean them up at the end. Okay? All right.